So with our lovely Miss P, ready cuteness? So I wanted to warm up a little bit with some of our loose leash walk-in. So obviously when first starting off with some loose leash skills, you can definitely do these things off of gear as well. So I know we mentioned in class a few different ways to kind of create some of this great behavior or response from your babe. Oh, she says she found one that was on the floor. How nice. So with your lovely lady, remember that a lot of times if the environment is too challenging and we lose her mentally or comfort range wise, remember that the skill set might also fall away at that point too. So ready, cuteness? So we might practice like you've been doing in and around the home. I know you mentioned though that she obviously is getting to be a bigger girl and a little bit more strong. So I know we've discussed a little bit with the potential for head collars. Nice job, cuteness. So head collars, just like with anything, we want to make sure that we're going, oh, it got stuck on my finger. We want to make sure that we're going at the rate of the pup's comfort range. So if, for example, sometimes novelty is harder for her, I would recommend sometimes having a little bit of a longer lead and then allowing the pup to explore that, let's say the loose leash walking with longer leashes in the yard could be a great way to build in that. Let's say if the puppy does get a bit ahead, you can then practice as they move forward the reorientation back to you. So you might go right here, Pepper. And remember, if she gets a little lost, beautiful, almost help her out. She was just noticing my little one getting her sweatshirt off and putting it on the chair. So the other thing to practice that we don't want to forget about is obviously, yes, head collars could be an option, but remember that we're not looking for the tool to change the dog's behavior. So for some folks, what I mean by that is if we slap on a piece of equipment and hope that magically now, oh, chew them, madam, is now that puppy won't pull, the problem there is we still haven't worked on the loose leash walking factor, which I know we've dived into in class. So for Miss P, if you were to ever try a head collar, there are all different brands out there. I prefer the Halty or the walk-in train or something similar. The Gentle Eater I feel is way too snug on the muzzle and it's a little bit, she's like, oh, spooky wall. And it's technically a bit too snug for my liking because, ready? Pepper. Yes, nice check-in. So the problem with the head collar always being really snug around the muzzle is that there's always constant pressure on it. And we want it to be mostly just resting on her face, but not applying constant pressure. The Gentle Leader typically has to be really snug to hold its position on the puppy's face. I prefer to, if you're going to try one that has little side straps that holds the noseband in place and allows the noseband to be very open and allow for full panting and comfortable movement of the mouth. So the other thing that I would recommend though is practice leash pressure. So leash pressure is getting your puppy to, when they feel pressure on the gear, is to do a check-in. So in the beginning, I'm just warming her up with some Find It so she doesn't feel as flustered. There's been some weird noises in the building again. And I don't want her to think that she, again, is trapped while she's on gear. She can move around and do as she pleases, especially if she's feeling a little bit unsure. So right here, leash pressure is I would have your puppy in front of you already. Oh, that was a beautiful sit, so I'm going to feed for that. But I'm going to have her near. I'm going to have the leash attached. Chewing is optional, so hold on. You got it okay? Panting and eating is very hard. Oh my goodness, there we go. So right here, I'm going to do a little pull and feed. So what this means is almost like the little tap on the shoulder. So right here, she feels pressure. I would want to help her, yes, do a little check-in. If she's a little bit unsure, so notice how she's a little bit nervous. I'm not going to force her, but I'm going to go and help her by redirecting her. Ready, cuteness? We'll do a little Find It. So right into a little Find It to help create some movement. So this is perfect practice because Miss P is a bit of a sensitive woman. And when she gets nervous, she does sort of turn into like a bowling ball with legs, which is fine. So right here, I'm just going to do that little kissy noise. But I'm going to try again with the leash pressure. So this is not a leash correction. So you're not yanking or pulling on the pup as they're going in the wrong direction. Oh my goodness, chewing is so hard. So I would do a little pull and feed, a little pull and feed. And again, a little pull and feed. So it shouldn't be overwhelming or spooky, but what it means for the puppy is almost like the tap on the shoulder when someone taps you and you say, yes, what would you like? And they're like, oh, could you do this thing? Remember, if we're constantly tapping on the shoulder, but we never tell the person what we want, they're gonna start to ignore the tap. So this doesn't mean, oh my goodness, chewing, madam. So this doesn't, I'll give her a little breather for a second. So this doesn't mean that, for example, ready, we'll do a couple Find Its. So when you go and the person taps you and let's say they do a little check-in, awesome. That would be communication. This doesn't mean that as your puppy is failing by pulling and walking forward with pressure, that you pull back while you're still walking forward. So if the puppy goes to pull past you, that's where I would stop, do a U-turn and feed for being by my side again, or try again, a little kissy noise, ready, Pepper, to do a little check-in. She's like, but what is she doing over there? Ready? Nice. She's like, she says, what is that wild lady doing next door, huh? Are you playing with some of your toys? Nice, with your ghost pillow. So with Miss P, if I constantly yank back as she's pulling forward, that tends to get her to ignore when she does feel anything on, oh my goodness, on the gear. She says, chewing is for losers. So for our little Miss P, I would want to practice helping her think that moving into me, like I did with some of the other babes earlier, is really beneficial too. So ready? Pepper. So right here, yes, good girl. She's just like, oh my gosh, there's a motorcycle too. So many noises. So obviously with your beauty, if again, she gets a little bit stuck, so I'm a little out of camera range. I'm just getting her attention back on me by luring her away. She says, oh my gosh, I dropped it again. So the benefit of this is, let's say your puppy goes and there's a little bit of tension. You would hope to help her do a little check-in. And I know right now she's almost pooped out where she'd like to go home. That's very nice. And then Ebba's doing some yoga. Very nice. So she might even have to have a potty break, which is acceptable. So, but if your puppy, yes, but 1 second, Ebba, okay? So, but if your puppy is really struggling with something with leash pressure in this trying environment, I'd recommend, and she might have to go for a little potty. We'll sneak you out in 2 seconds, cuteness. So with the leash pressure, make sure you're working at home. So all this should look like is helping your puppy move into your space when they feel a little bit of that leash. And then from there, when they go to pull and they feel the tension, it should equal turn into you for another paycheck. So even if, let's say, for example, she's a little distracted and having a little bit of a harder time, I would do a little pull and then feed for when she comes into my space for that response. So I know she's getting to the end of her day, just like with most of the babes. By the end of the practice, they're a little bit pooped out. But I do want to sneak her out. She did have a great potty break outside earlier, but I want to make sure she's nice and comfortable and empty. But I would recommend keep rocking and rolling for Miss P. I know she's a little tired. We'll do a little find it for the lovely. But make sure, again, we're working at her level. So you'll see that a lot of times if babes give me a moment where they're like, nope, can't possibly do it, I don't force it. So there's plenty of folks that would then get frustrated. Oh, my dog's not listening. They're being stubborn. They have only their listening ears when they feel like it. Remember that that is your dog's only way to say, I maybe don't understand. I'm overwhelmed. I don't get the concept. Maybe the environment is too stimulating. So a lot of times your puppies or your dogs not responding could be that we need to help them figure it out a little bit better, or assess, am I maybe asking for too many things all at once? So obviously in here, when my babes are sometimes not grasping something, I don't keep going to try to get my point across to them, because it then creates potentially a negative association. And I don't want my dog to think that no matter how they're trying to tell me how they're feeling, that I ignore that. So for Miss P, she says, she pooped out. She's going and laying down off to the side near my little one. So you guys may find when practicing at home, lower the criteria at times, make sure she's being successful, and you want to look for, again, glimmers of beneficial behaviors or skill sets that you're kind of building onto. So remember, not perfection, but progress. And then from there, you'll start to see progression that starts to change into the direction you were hoping to get to. So, but remember, she's the one who decides things are scary or not scary. So even though we might think something's super benign and not even really that dangerous, we know that she, from her perspective, still views it as a very real threat. So make sure that when you're practicing, we're almost responding to her and understanding, okay, this might be hard for you. Let's lower the criteria and try this instead. We are dealing with life changes, so different life stages. She's going into now adolescence from puppyhood. So that's a whole nother can of worms to deal with developmentally, physically, as she changes and grows. Also, I know she's going to be going through a heat cycle or two before she's then going to get altered. So those will also be some changes that might come behaviorally and physically for the lovely lady. So, but again, she did really nice for her second day, while the other two, technically this is their fourth day. So I think in the grand scheme of things, Miss P did a splendid job for her first session, you know, for the 2 weeks. I'm sorry, the 2 days. So keep rocking and rolling it. If again, anybody from the Doggy Day School has a question or concern, remember to check in. But don't forget about all the awesome resources that were sent along from previous classes or from this program as well. So you have those at your fingertips for more beneficial moments for you and your babe to be successful. But again, we'll give little Miss P a break because she has pooped out, and we'll call it a day for the beauties.